Hey, welcome back, Yvonne Wakefield's YouTube channel. We're going to finish up tonight this second book in this 3-book series of Babe in the Woods. We did Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time. Teddy's having a little problem because he wants to be with Arturo, so he's wearing his camo today. Both Zachary and he are wearing camo. Go see him. Quit bugging me. So the first book, Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time, is about when I was 18 and went up and bought 80 acres in the Oregon mountains and built this log cabin, which I still own today. Self-portrait takes off from that era. It's in like my early 20s. And during that time, I also built a smaller log studio. It was kind of a post-log cabin test. Like I wanted to try and build this myself. So I built this little studio. I think it was 12 by 12, 14 by 14. So that's kind of the premise of this book, but it also talks about my experience as an artist. To behave. They're whining over it. My experience as an artist, because at that time, I was working or being a student at the Mendocino Art Center in Northern California, and I'd get the summers off. So I'd spend the summers up at the cabin, painting and building. So tonight we're going to get to the end of this book, the last 2 chapters. But before I do that, I'm also the author of Suitcase Filled with Nails, Lessons Learned from Teaching Art in Kuwait. And given what's happening right now in the Middle East, I want to put a human perspective on this. I lived in Kuwait for 6 years. I was invited into families' homes. They treated me as part of their family. Every one of the countries right now under attack are countries I visited in the Middle East and countries that I have friends in, friends that have families and jobs and kids just like you. So at this point, I'm really feeling for them. If you want a different perspective on the Middle East, this is not just about being a university art professor, but it's about relating and having friendships with the Middle East community. So we're going to get into the last 2 chapters, but I need to recap. So I think Arturo put up a picture of the little dog I got. It was a little boy dog I got at a veterinary clinic, and he was going to be put down, and I adopted him. He was just a little runt, and I named him Arthur after my father. So prior to that, I was scavenging an old deer skeleton, and that's kind of what made me think, like, I need to get some kind of a dog because something was in the woods, like while I was scavenging this skeleton, and I heard it, and I thought, well, if I had a dog would warn me about it. So I got this little dog, which was about as big as a slipper. Might have kept things at bay or not. Just want to also remind you before I forget, all of these books are available anywhere books are sold. Or books are stole. Don't steal a book. Who was that guy? Abby Hoffman, who said, don't steal this book. I think he was the one. Okay. Chapter 27, Positive Ions. I wish the idea of a bear-proof studio had remained just that. I'd rather be painting than whacking away with a hammer or axe. My cash stash devoted to stocking up on canvases and oil paints to see me through the summer is almost too depleted to cover building materials. Remember, I'm on a student budget here and living off what I earned doing part-time work. To finish what I started means draining my financial reserve to the very bottom to pay Jim to help with ridgepole and rafters. Weeks before ordering roofing, he had wisely advised a crude architectural rendering by calculating a steeper pitch to make it easier for snow to slide off. It takes days of angling 2x4s before the roof is ready for boards. Remember, this is the little cabin I'm building. It's taken actually 3 summers to do it because I hand dug a cellar and then made it in cement so it would be protected against bears, safe against bears. To save money, I lay the roof by myself, cutting 8-foot sections instead of 12-footers. Just the loss of 4 feet makes hauling up boards and crowbarring them tight that much easier. Though the pitch is so steep, I have to tie myself around the waist and the other end around a log for safety. When I read that right now, I went, I can't believe I used to do that. Metal roofing is less aesthetic than the tamarack shakes I used on the cabin, but it offers better protection against potential wildfire. With Jim's help, I calculate how many sheets I will need and telephone in an order to a supply store in Boise, mailing them a check that includes the cost of delivery. The delivery gets as far as the judge's metal. After one look at the eliminator is a road I named that it's really hard to get up. After one look at the eliminator, the driver's chicken choice delegates me as the hauler of panels extending past the Datsun's bed. If you remember, the Datsun is my little truck. He drives away after leaving his load at the foot of the most challenging piece of road, not even offering a refund for services he'd been prepaid to deliver. Hoisting galvanized aluminum sheeting in and out of my truck bed is a piece of cake compared to lifting a piece up 2 stories. I wished for another $100 bill in my boot to pay Jim to help me finish the roof, but instead made a withdrawal at the bank. When Jim's arrives, we devise a kind of rope netting to haul up each 8-foot panel. On occasion, one slithers out of the improvised harness, crashing to the ground, crumpling to the corners. Tethered by a 60-foot length of pricey polyester rope, I balance barefooted on steep roofing, heating up like a pancake grill, and hammer nails with rubber girdles. By noon's mounting sun, my soles fry like bacon, and I lace on moccasins as the bottom of my work boots are too slick to stick on a galvanized incline. By the time the roof is finished, that rope has been stretched to the end, and so have my savings. After the roof was laid, it got real quiet on the mountain. Record high temperatures and gas prices have pretty much confined Annabelle and Dale Tatum to the air-conditioned house. Remember, Annabelle and Dale were this older couple that helped me. And then Don Paulson was a neighbor who used to come up and help too. Even Don Paulson's nightly howdy-doos have subsided. 3 days horizontal on the couch might have been enough for him to heal sufficiently to stand upright, but being accidentally run over by his John Deere has severely limited his mobility. Mark, who alighted at the rat shack, departed only days after being introduced to a dog with a name that roused his lost boy sleeping in a bed of stomach ulcers. Remember, that's my brother. I usually balance isolation with work. Not since the very first night I moved into the cabin and realized I was too empty to fill it have I felt this unaddressed dark hollow. It resides smack in my chest, a visceral chasm that makes me gag on food I can't swallow. All I can manage to down is coffee, water, and apple juice to fill the pit I want to scorch with scotch, straight from the bottle that I would buy if I could force myself to drive to town where being around people would likely make me hit rock bottom. For 2 days, I stay on the porch and paint, glancing down the road between ponderous brushstrokes, hoping someone will walk up, stop dead in their tracks, and take an impartial gander at this odd bird. Maybe it'd offer an outstretched hand to bridge wild falter and moral connection. Only stingy breezes and stinky memories make the trek. While on occasion my mind can get a bit mussed, I'm a steadfast stickler about keeping my quarters tight as hospital corners. To see an object, even as innocuous as a soup spoon out of place, is enough to founder my collinear sense of order. My mind, on the other hand, has clutters and catches of recollections purposely swept into corners. Like dust bunnies, some get kicked up, contemplated by the winds over a past that were openly out of place. My feelings of displacement began at birth. I squeezed out of my mother's womb into a neonatal life 5 weeks too soon, then was incubated under oxygen compression, controlled climate lacking in primal loving connections, antiseptically entombed for days, maybe weeks. I don't recall the whole story. I sucked life inside, sterile glass sides scratched by baby pink fingers, as pink as newborn mice. I grew into a feral child who fell out of trees, or off skateboards and bicycles, landing hard in multifarious ways, both literal and metaphorical. Not because I was clumsy or careless, but because of a shifty planet covered with throw rugs that kept getting pulled out from under me. Major tumbles included not recognizing my father behind a deadpan stare after his first suicide attempt, and the ensuing electroshock therapy sessions that ended his life. Just a few short years later, I had to watch my mother's receding face, white as a sheet draping her body as orderlies wheeled her away on a hospital gurney toward the losing side of life. The deaths of my parents led to experiences that scalded away my childhood veneer. Without a family, I fell into a system without safeguards and had experiences that left my insides nicked, scratched, and dented, and filled me with unshed tears. The feelings of displacement ratcheted up when I had time to think back on conditions and circumstances of my adolescence. I was touched in ways minors should never be touched. Actions I believed at the time were caring and consensual. Now, as a young adult, I realize they were neither. It's this last pearl in my string of thinking that makes me sick. Maybe the cabin is an incubator and the mountain is the tending day nurse and the creek is really a purging enema. While I flounder with memories and paint on the porch, Inipe, remember Inipe's the Siamese cat? Inipe and Arthur stay inside, curled together on the rocker, shying from my stinky think. After 2 days of reflective reverie, my melancholy has leaked into bruising blue canvases, and my pets don't move a whisker when I leave the porch. I walk alone to the creek and plant my easel on the bank beside a frothing whirlpool and scrutinize values that won't cease lashing shoots laddering down splashy rock faces. The last time I stood so reverently beside this spot, I was in the company of a baby bird on a branch and a realtor in a cowboy hat. Harnessing this cascading alabaster ruckus of milky glacial runoff forces me to lighten up the shadowy palette I'd been brushing out in the previous 2 days of forest painting. I squeeze out a mass of titanium, then blend up patches mixed with tads of maple, yellow, Payne's gray, just enough to tone down splurging creek highlights so they remain brilliant, but not falsely overpowering. In Mendocino, I developed these blends in order to paint the crashing ocean, stuffing custom mixes into empty tubes labeled reflected light, refracted light, absorbed light. Each time I painted the sea, I felt better than before, and I sought out a book that might explain why I felt soothed after painting White-Capped Rampage. I found one explanation concerning the atomic relationships in moving water in a used physics textbook, negative ions. I always thought of negative ion as a pessimistic microscopic speck, but instead this musty textbook said they were atoms charged with electrons. Instead of possessing a bad attitude, they can produce mood-enhancing biochemical reactions in the body and mind. Alchemy stirred by moving water. Continuing my pseudoscience search in Mendocino led me to invent a wave catcher to further investigate negative ions. Actually, it was a plastic Clorox jug with the top cut off and a long, wiry clothesline tied to the handle. But I called it my wave catcher because that's what it did. The first wave I caught was on a full moon night. From an outcrop on the coastal headlands, I unfurled the contraption, the jug biting into the tip of the wave just before it broke against the sandstone cliff where I stood firmly at the other end of the clothesline. Hand over hand, I pulled up the jug filled with the wave tips sloshing around inside. In the studio, I dipped my brushes into the wave catcher, using the water as a vehicle to charge acrylic paint across canvas. Since returning to the cabin that summer, I'd forgotten about the healing powers of moving water, even though it was rushing all around my land. It never occurred to me this glacial mountain mineral stream could emulate a thrashing salted sea. I moved the easel to work on the creek bank, dipping my brushes directly into the wild water below a boulder where I'd once retrieved a bloody bone and later observed a water ouzel. I paint acrylic studies until I run clear through my canvas supply, then resort to washes on paper. I don't really like working in acrylic paint, especially on paper, but using anatomically charged creek water as a medium necessitates this conveyance. Sorry, gray-fused shadows on canvases are transformed into brilliant blue flushings on paper. I am still living on coffee, water, and apple juice, a diet day by day reducing the physical matter between me and the subject I paint. 3 days sustained by only liquid leaves me shaky and clearly much lighter. By the 4th day, I'm done with painting, and like silt piled behind a boulder bit by bit, my mental muck has washed free. The sprites return to my cells, sure as smote cycle back to their Alivian source, and I resurface with pluck and an appetite. Hey, little buddies! I join Inipe and Arthur, who've roused from the rocker to greet me on the porch, and their eyes open wide as I unlatch the cooler. The 3 of us sit in a sun swatch, sharing bite-sized Tillamook cubes paired with my Girl Scout knife. One for you, and one for me. I promise, doling out uniform cheese chunks. Arthur woofs his. Inipe nibbles. I chew mine behind a waxing smile. When the cheese is finished, Inipe grooms his whisker, and Arthur lies beside me as I stretch my legs on the porch and write in my journal. Journal entry, August 26th. There is a reality embedded in the cracks below the surface of convention of material goods, of interpersonal communication. It is the reality out of the hub, rooted in the quiet way the heart turns, seeking to explore its nature in solitude, in nature. This reality takes shapes, gives voice in the findings after the digs of self-examination. It is a conscious and unconscious exploration of the self, an examination of dreams that mount up in the mind. One must fall into this crack or step unknowingly into it to avoid the trample of society in order to hear, see, feel the body and spirit we were born with. There is life in ourselves we rush by in our search for fulfillment, fortune, love. I find this self, the primal one, only through living in a blast of solitude that can be as easy to swallow as it is often difficult to digest. It is in this living in and from myself that I grow the most. This self finds ecstasy in winds, whipping trees, in the water of trout against the earthly mosaic creek bottom, in the attitudes of domestic and wild animals that live with me. It is this essence I seek that nurtures this solitude. It is only here that I find what lies beneath the fast churn of our outer progress. It is ominous, coldly lonely, intensely refreshing to live this life between the cracks. It is not only a time to feel the richness of silence, but a time for self-reflection when I reach a point of clarity, when I know I am seeing through the filters of experience that have created patterns I act and react from. I close the journal, walk into the cabin, grab the broom, and continue to sweep out dusky corners. So remember, I was 21 or 22 when I wrote this, and there was no phone up at the cabin. It was before internet. So that was the reality of that. All right, we're going to finish with the last chapter, Self-Portrait, which is also the subtitle of the book. The latest Blue Mountain Eagle advertises a clothing sale at Alec Gay Hall. My denim and flannel glad rags broadcast my proclivity for investing in hand tools over highbrow outfits, but it's time to spruce up my wardrobe. In just a week, this summer on the mountain will draw to a close, and I will be back to working in deadline and official paper places where jeans and flannels remain in the closet. I haven't left the mountain during my days of brooding, and the opportunity to exchange words with strangers while wrestling with new vestments seems fitting. My paint stock could get me through another month or two, but my food supply won't last the week and needs replenishing. See you later, little buddy. I kiss Inipe goodbye and close the cabin door on the whisker slicker in the rocker. Load up. I direct bonging Arthur, and he springs into the cab and skids across the bench seat to ride shotgun. Shopping that day includes groceries, a stop at the hardware store for a pick, duct tape, molding strips, and a new chain for the saw. But even more extravagant is buying my clothes, my city clothes. I pull up in the shade of Alec Gay Hall, one of many post-Gold Rush, post-World War II stone buildings patterning John Day's eclectic architecture. Today, the dimly lit interior has been transformed into a spread-out trunk sale. Fold-out tables are stacked, and portable racks hang with new clothing 1 or 2 years out of style. The clothes are all shiny, starchy, and chemical-smelling, not time-worn like the Goodwill jeans and shirts that trail cheer until I wear them out in the pitchy woods and around puffy wood fires. The changing room is a section of the hall draped off by blankets hung from ropes. This communal changing area conceals gaggles of women squirming in and out of old fashions. I have no compunctions running around the mountain bare-breasted, but behind the blankets, I blush with modesty as I try on blouses. When I dress again in my jeans, checkered shirt, and work boots, I look again like I do not fit in. The women around me casually wear clothes like the sprightly slacks and floral pattern vestments I have only bought to appear professional and proper. Move, little buddy. Arthur smells a plastic bag filled with new duds. I stow them next to the fresh groceries behind the seat before driving to Prairie City. Dell is in the shed when I park in the lumber yard beside the boards I helped him sticker stock a month before. I wait until he is done ripping through a log before waving. Starting him as he is sawing might make him take his eye off the blade, and I don't want any part of responsibility for his losing another finger. When the log is sliced, I step into Dell's view. He flicks a switch and the din dies down until the saw blade is still and silent. That's when I approach the shed and say, I want to buy some to buy. Dale has me repeat the question, and I stand in front of him this time because now he can only really hear clearly if he can see your lips moving. He says he doesn't have any finished lumber on hand. If I help him, though, he'll plane rough cut into the shelving I want. First, the space under the planer has to be cleared. I spend half an hour shoveling curlicue shavings into a rickety wheelbarrow and emptying it into the teepee burner's belly while Dale tools around gauging the blades. When we finally get those boards moving, the planer is so screamy I can't hear, but Dale can only read his lips. Pull! Sawdust clouds the air between us and the planking being shaved. By 4 o'clock, I have a truckload of sleek boards and a shirt full of itch. I discover after jumping into the shaving mound I made inside the teepee burner, sawdust is not as gratifying as a tumble in raked maple leaves. By 4:30, I am splashing away this failed childhood memory of a Midwest fall. Earlier that summer, I'd uncovered a shady spot off the highway by the river and promised myself I would return to paint the plateau view across the shore. The location is just far enough off the highway so I am undetected by passing traffic. It also offers a clear upland view of open cattle range and is close enough to a cottonwood grove that I can climb low branches if those boundaryless bovines decide to stampede. It is also a good place to give Arthur his first swimming lesson. He'd been patient all day while I girly shopped and milled. I released him in the river's middle and dog paddle beside him until we scamper ashore. Then I treat him to a small tin of wet dog food, a delicacy he'd never enjoyed before, and he laps up the entire can of mush I mashed with a stick on a flat boulder. While he digests, I dry in my underpants and paint the fringe of cottonwood shade, a knobby mix of sienna, swept and stippled to form a crade's sedimentary information into seamlessly blended manganese sky. I move between painting high mesa and low river washboard, tippling highlights, angling cast shadows, and anchoring precise rock bottom reflections. When I think I am finished with what I started, I step back from the easel, close one eye, narrow the other on the monolithic geological upheaval looming down upon or hovering above, depending upon your philosophical viewpoint. a waterbed patterned with pebbles that have been rolled about, roughed up, and smoothed by seasonal highs and lows. I open the shut eye, then focus both, scrutinize the canvas long enough to title it Self-Portrait. That ends Babe in the Woods Self-Portrait, 168 pages, and this was, I don't know if you can see, this is a kind of a blurred out image of that painting. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed these books. If you do like them, buy them. Anywhere books are sold, they're all on audiobooks. Kay Webster does a fascinating job, professional job. She's an actor of recording all 3 books, including Suitcase Filled with Nails. So those are on Audible. Hope you've enjoyed that. We will be back again in a couple of weeks. Hope things simmer down where you are. And remember, stay hydrated. Bye-bye.